And I slept there on under the bridge. Like I made a tent, and I was thinking, what am I doing? And like, why am I here? Like I look just like a homeless person. I had a phone call saying my grandma passed away. So that was, and she passed away from COVID. So I was like, and she was the last grandparent I had at the time. And I was like, I was shattered. I was so shattered. I was like, I refused to be a slave in somebody else's house. Especially in Uzbek culture, we are raised in the way of like boy is born for the family, girl is born for someone else's family. Okay, but everybody was like, oh, don't worry, don't worry, things happen. But it was very with the complications, so I had to go through the surgery, like the cleaning, proper like. We come to the customs. My husband passes, and they put me aside. They were like, oh, can you step aside? Okay. They take me to the detention center, and they're like, you're not allowed to enter the country. I'm like,
Hello, and welcome to Finding Your Place, a podcast about people and their stories of moving abroad and finding a place to call home. This podcast is going to help you enrich your cultural knowledge or help you move abroad. Before we dive deep into the conversation today, could you please subscribe, as this helps us build future episodes and improve this podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by a friend of my friend, Noza, who moved abroad many times, and who is going to dive deep into how it feels to move abroad as a woman and what challenges we face. This episode gets a bit emotional, so get ready to shed some tears, and thank you for tuning in. Yeah, last time I was interviewing you, you were doing El Camino, the long walk.
I think I should probably correct you. The correct name.
Yeah.
Chemin de Compostelle. It's called. It's Santiago de Compostela in Spanish and Chemin de Compostelle in French. So I did actually only French side. It was exactly 748 kilometers on foot.
That's crazy.
3 months.
You had a very good reason for doing it. Can you go into details about it? Because I
Yeah,
found that
I
inspirational.
did. First thing first, look, if we're talking about the actual Chemin de Compostelle all the way to Santiago de Compostela, I did not finish it. I had to stop at the French-Spanish border because, again, lockdowns, the reasons. There was a lot of reasons. One of them is basically me being crazy, but that's not one of the main reasons. Um, it there's actually a very big kind of backstory to the whole walk because I came from Uzbekistan, and I came like I was living in Australia, then I was living in Russia. So I've been quite successful. I had my own business. I've been quite successful at work, career, business, everything. So I had a really good kind of lifestyle. And then I met my husband, not blaming him for anything, but we had to come to France. It was kind of my fault as well. And the problem was that I did not speak French at all. So I end up being this like super cool, driven, ambitious business girl who turned into confined at home housewife who did not speak the language, a typical immigrant wife. You know, the ones that don't speak, they come to their husband's country and they have no connections, no friends, no language. So I turned into that type of housewife. Plus, I had a lot of health issues at the time because I guess it's all females here, so I can be quite open. I had miscarriages. It was very hard miscarriages, so I had to go through surgery, from surgery to surgery. So three surgeries after each miscarriage. So that was very hard on me. So, and everything happened at the same time. So we got married. I got kicked out of Russia because my stupidity. I forgot to update my visa, and I got kicked out, deported literally. So because I got deported from Russia, I was kind of forced to come here if I wanted to be with my husband. He had to leave Russia as well. And we moved here and we were like, okay. And my husband was too busy earning money, made at home, and then the confinement started. So everything kind of mixed. I got into really deep depression. It was very hardcore depression. So at the time, all this depression, the confinement starts, the lockdown, everything is locked. Like my husband went to work travel to Russia at the same time, and he got locked in Russia. I got locked in France alone. I had to remember that, hey, I'm not like I could do that for like for 15, 20 years. I did it alone because I left Uzbekistan when I was 18 and I met my husband when I was almost 30. So how could I, that's like self-independent woman, turn into this dependent kind of looking at my husband all the time, asking what should I do, what can I do, what am I supposed to do kind of person. So that 3 months of lockdown, I was sitting there and kind of reflecting on myself and thinking, what am I going to do, what am I going to do. So when the first lockdown kind of unlocked a little bit, I created a Facebook group called Hiking Near Lyon, and I started bringing in people, all the expats who liked hiking, because there was already a lot of communities, but they were all kind of targeted towards alcohol, meeting new people, but like mingling. So a lot of singles going there. And as a married woman who doesn't want to get drunk and hook up, I was like, okay, that's not for me. I need something different. So I created this. It was already created, but it was like a few hundred people. And the owner of this group was like, "Oh, I'm leaving to Paris. Somebody needs to take over." And I was like, "Give it to me. I'll take care of it." I started getting at least friends. I met people who I could communicate with. It was like English speaking expats, people who had a similar interest, who had a similar kind of stories. I was a housewife, but they all were like, PhD students. It was like people who came for work and stuff like that. So it was such a different environment for me to be able to communicate with people, to be able to speak in this level that I was, not in the, where you're just like, all you could talk about is cleaning and cooking and
Well,
like, I wasn't even a mother. And I was stuck with this like weird housewife kind of environment. So that gave me a lot of kind of energy, but I still was not satisfied. I was not getting what I wanted. I was kind of searching myself still, and my French was still shit. And one day, a friend of mine, one of the hikers, they were talking about the Camino. I was like, "What is that?" They're like, "Oh, it's a pilgrim for Christians, but it's quite spiritual. Everybody can do that." I was like, "Okay, very interesting." And I started Googling it up and I was like, okay, I saw that it's very interesting. And you could actually start it in Lyon, straight from home. Like you could literally walk from your home and just keep walking. I was like, okay, let's see what's at the time. Again, my husband was very active with the Russian business, so he had to go to Russia and Uzbekistan all the time. And one day he was like, "Hey, I need to go to Russia for it will take like a month or and a half. I need to do some stuff there." I was like, "Okay." And I'm thinking, 1 month and a half, what am I gonna do alone? So I took him to the airport. Remember, I took him to the airport, came back, went to Decathlon and like over camper, bought whatever I needed to buy like additional because I already had a lot of equipment for hiking, but I just additional stuff. Next morning, like 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., I just packed my stuff and walked out. That's it. I was like, I'm done. So I walked out literally next morning after I dropped off my husband at the airport and I started walking. I took my, one of the most important things I took was a teddy bear that my husband brought me from overseas. Like he was overseas when I had a last miscarriage. So he sent like, and I was alone. So he sent me like flowers with a little teddy bear to kind of, you know, make me feel better. And I took that teddy bear I know it's. I'm like, I still like when I remember, I just want to cry again. So I took that teddy bear and I took my backpack, sleeping bag, everything. I was super light packed, 20 kilos without any food, 18 kilos without any food, and I just walk. And I start walking, walking, walking. I walked like 24 kilometers that day. I stopped like on the edge, outskirts of Lyon somewhere, and I slept there on under the bridge. Like I made a tent, and I was thinking, what am I doing? And I'm like, why am I here? Like I look just like a homeless person. I was like, yeah. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna try, and if I don't want to feel like I'm a homeless person and like walking along the highway, which was quite dangerous as well, I was like, I should probably start where everybody starts. So next day, I took a train to the Le Puy-en-Velay, got there, and the feeling was already different. Along the way, I met a few people. We chatted. My French was still shit, so but I did my best to kind of communicate because one of one of the reasons to do this walk was to kind of talk to people. I had a phone call saying my grandma passed away, so that was, and she passed away from COVID. So I was like, and she was the last grandparent I had at the time, and I was like, I was shattered. I was so shattered. I was like really hard on me. Sorry. That's why I wasn't sure if it is good.
I'm so sorry.
I wanted to go, like I wanted to fly straight away, but I was in the middle of nowhere at the time because I already walked like 20 kilometers, not even 20, it was like 30 or 30, 35 kilometers away from the city. Not even a city, it was a little town, you know, that Le Puy-en-Velay, it's like a little town. So I was like I had to either go back to Lyon. I had to take a flight which is irregular. Going anywhere was hard at the time. PCRs, like if you remember, like the borders were all closed, and it was very very uh the moment of pandemic. It was October 2020, so it was the most like the peak of the pandemic. So imagine you're like waking up and you get like shitloads of messages with condolences. All my Facebook was like people were sending me condolences. And I'm like, what is going on? You know? And I start calling. I'm like, what's going on? So I called my dad. I reached my dad finally. I was like, when I figured out that it was my grandma, I was like, called my dad. I'm like, Dad, I want to go home. And he's a very, very level headed. He was like, don't. He's like, I'm not going to a funeral. Your mom is the only one going. The funeral will be very small. And in Uzbekistan, we have very big funerals. We're like Asian plus Middle Eastern all mixed up. So it's very cultural, you know, that 10 days, 40 days of funerals, like it's big uh, and it's a lot of work. So for me, like it was so hard, especially since my first grandpa died, I was too small. My second grandpa died, I was in Australia. By the time I reached Uzbekistan, he was already buried, so I didn't have time to say goodbye either. So the only person I actually managed to say goodbye is my paternal grandma. Because even then, I flew to France. The day I flew to France, she died. I had to go back on the same day. So funeral has been very hard when you as an immigrant it's hard thing.
You moved abroad and you're trying to build up your life, but you have your life back home and you're kind of triggered to go back, like you want to adapt, but things happen home. It's
Yeah,
so hard also, like it's incredible you're such a strong person.
immigrants are amazingly strong people, like leaving everything and going, it's hard. And I kept walking blindly, so there was a path, I just walked.
Hi, you're listening to Finding Your Place podcast. Thank you for listening. You really found this walk, like, I think it's really powerful for your mind. Made me actually want to do it. You kind of compare the culture and the funeral from like Uzbekistan to like how things happen here in Europe. And I actually want want you to go a bit deeper into that. I want you to give some listeners some motivation. Why did you leave Uzbekistan, and why did you decide to move abroad for the first time?
Well, look, I love my country. I adore the culture. I adore the traditions. I am Uzbek from head to toe. Like I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And I go back at least twice a year. I follow as much cultural traditions, everything in Uzbekistan. I adore it. But the thing is, I am not my mentality, my lifestyle is not suited, and we clash. Uzbekistan and me, we just do not accept each other. It's like, where you have like a some, there's a saying like best relatives who are far away.
Yeah.
Uzbekistan is like that to me. Like, not my relatives, my family, I love them, they are amazing people, but the actual country in a whole, we just clash. I am I'm a feminist, first of all. I believe I'm a feminist, not the type of who's gonna burn like underwear and like put the menstrual pads everywhere type of, but I'm the type of feminist who believes that women have rights. Women are also human and equal humans. In Uzbekistan, unfortunately, the way they look at females is secondary. I refuse to be a slave in somebody else's house. Especially in Uzbek culture, we are raised in the way of like, boy is born for the family, girl is born for someone else's family. And they will actually tell you. My grandmother, my grandfather used to tell me, I was born for someone else's family. And that was horrible thing to say to a child, but it's a normal cultural thing. And they expect you, if you get married, you have to go to your husband's family's house. So you live with, not only with your husband, but you have to move to his parents' house. And whoever is still living there, so whether it's your brother-in-law, sister-in-law, like m- divorced sister-in-law who comes back to her parents' house with her kids, you have to serve them all. You have to serve them all, and you have to smile at them while serving, and they will expect you to do everything. So I could not accept that. I could not accept being somebody else's property. And the biggest person who played the role in my kind of development in me being feminist is my father. I was like, no, 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 no. This is not. So from the very young age, I decided that I will never ever marry into Uzbek family. Before I graduated school, he sat me down and he said, he already sent my brother to Australia at the time when he was 17, which was a bit too early for me. But he sat me down and he was like, look, you have a choice. Like, either you stay here and you study whatever you want, which I wanted the medicine. I really wanted to study medicine. It's like, you study medicine, you go to medical school, I'll help you to get in if needed. I'll buy your car. You'll have everything. And we're from kind of upper class. We're not rich, but we're from upper class. So we had always enough money to support ourselves. So he was like, I'll buy your car, I'll buy you everything. Like, you will have nothing to worry. And probably you will meet a guy who's the same level or higher than us, and you will be married to that family. So, whatever. Another option is that I can't afford medical school in Australia. I can't help you in Australia. But if you choose to leave, I'm I'm willing to pay for your education for business studies. That's the only thing I can afford. Business studies, business school. I'll send you. I cannot afford your accommodation, he said. I cannot afford your food. I'm not going to send you any money. I'm going to pay for 1 month of your accommodation, whatever necessary for you to settle down. Your studies, your entire studies. That's it. The rest is on you. You want to wash floors somewhere, you want to like wipe McDonald's tables, do it. I don't care. You are on your own. So choose. Guess what I chose? I'm gonna lick the floors in McDonald's. I was like, I'm leaving. I'm out.
So how was being in Australia, and why didn't you settle there? Like, why did you decide to move again?
I lived there for 10 years and I don't know, at the time I got my degree there. I've traveled the world. It was, but there was something that was missing in Australia for me. After 10 years, I was like, something is missing. Feel, I feel something is not enough. Australia is a bubble. You have to admit it. Australia is amazing place, but it's a bubble. It's so secluded from everything. It's so far away from everything that it's very hard. And actually, that's another one of the reasons also why I've start feeling kind of claustrophobic in Australia is that year, the year when I decided to leave, that's the year when my grandpa died. So like my adult kind of my paternal grandpa. So I was what happened was I left work and I used to drive from because I used to live like in a suburb called Cronulla, which is a beautiful. It's an open ocean. It's one of the most beautiful suburbs in Sydney, for me at least. It's an open ocean. It's a little peninsula actually that kind of stretches out from Sydney itself in the south. So I lived there and I worked in the city center. So I took a car, like I finished work, I start driving, and in the middle of the highway, I get a phone call from my cousin. And I was like, oh, that's kind of late for them or early. I don't remember. Yeah, it was too early. It was quite morning for them. She's calling me, and she's bawling. She's like crying. She can't speak properly. And I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And I'm in the middle of the highway, so I can't stop. I can't do anything. She's just on the loudspeaker and she's crying. And through her tears, she's just like, she keeps saying, Dada John, Dada John, Dada John, which means grandpa, grandpa, grandpa. And I'm like, what's going on? Sorry, apparently a lot of my stories are linked to funerals.
Okay.
So she manages like in 15 minutes she managed to explain to me that grandpa passed away, died. I was like, there was nothing that was saying that it's gonna happen. Apparently he had stroke and he fell and that's it. And I'm in a shock. I'm 100 kilometers an hour. I'm just like, I don't know what to do. I can't stop the car. I can't do anything. I'm just like, I don't remember exactly what happened, but in the middle of the highway, I just pulled over. I don't remember how I managed to get home. Same day, and flying from Australia to Uzbekistan is at the time was very hard. You still don't have direct flights. So I had to go to, I think I went through Kuala Lumpur, overnight stay there, and then Kuala Lumpur to Tashkent direct. So I arrived on the third day of of his death. But in Muslim, like for Christians, it's a little from one side, it's a little bit easier because the Christians they kind of hold the dead person until everybody arrives, whereas Muslims we don't do that. You need to bury the person before the sunset. So if he died in the middle of the night, you bury the next morning. If he died in the middle of the day,
Oh.
wrap it up, done. So you need to bury the person before the sunset. So it was a very hard for everyone at the time because so I was in Australia. My dad so my dad, who's the son of the grandpa, he and my mom they were in USA. My brother was also somewhere in Europe. My auntie, the youngest daughter of my grandpa, she was in UK. Imagine out of 4 kids, only 2 kids were in Tashkent for the burial. Nobody made it. Nobody made it for the funeral. And then when I came back to Australia, I it felt different to me, and I stayed there for about another maybe 6 months, 6 7 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I started getting depression. I started getting like sad. I couldn't perform at work, and my boss started already saying like, look, if you're not going to perform, we'll have to fire you. And I was in the sales, so KPI is the must
Yeah.
there. Yeah. So at the time my mom called me, and I was supposed to apply for citizenship at the time as well, but things start getting wrong. Like I could not get my shits together. My citizenship is like, I kept missing deadlines, I kept missing everything, so I didn't apply for citizenship. And my mom called me. She was like, are you okay? I'm like, Mom, no, I'm not okay. I feel like I'm getting into depression, and I cannot get myself out of it. She was like, if you're struggling, come back. She's like, come back to Uzbekistan. We need somebody to take over the marketing department. We are looking for an employee anyways. Come help us with the business, family business. I was like, I probably thought about it about a week max, maybe a few days, and few days later I was like, you know what, you're right, I'm gonna go. At 90 kilos I packed, and I was just looking at it. I was thinking, damn, same reaction. 10 years in three suitcases, that's it.
Like, you returned to Uzbekistan, you obviously didn't want to be there, and then you somehow got to Russia. How?
There was a difference between the two kind of. The girl who didn't want to live, who ran away from Uzbekistan, was a 17-year-old girl. So I left Uzbekistan when I was 18. I was turning 19 at the time. The girl who came back was 28. The woman came back, 28-year-old. When I came back, my thought process was like, I'm 28 years old. I am a over the hill. Nobody's gonna marry me. So I was like happy. Like, who needs a old hag? According to like by 24, I was considered old hag. So I was like, who's gonna marry me? So I was like, nobody's gonna touch me. Nobody's gonna bother me. So I'm gonna chill and do my things. When I arrived, I already had like a list of profiles. It was a freaking Tinder. Like it was a anti-Tinder. I arrived, there was like 3 4 people like lined up, full profiles. The good thing about, at least the good thing about Uzbek culture, or these Asian arranged marriage cultures, is you're not forced to marry. You can choose. So what it happens is it's like a Tinder. It's literally like a Tinder. You swipe right, you swipe left. Everybody who swiped, I don't know which side, left or right. I've never used Tinder, but
Right.
whatever you swipe to the correct side, whatever you swipe to the correct side, you double check the profiles, and then you go on a date. One date, you like them, you stay with them. Second date, the only thing is after third date, everybody starts asking when is the wedding. Yeah, I went on dates. I was like, I was curious. Who in their right mind in Uzbekistan would be interested for a 28-year-old woman who's who lived overseas, who is definitely not a virgin? But it still kept going. It still kept going. I still keep getting the pressure of, oh, you need to marry, you need to marry. And I was just like, oh my God, get over yourselves, people. I will never get married. And I honestly, at the time, I was like, I don't want to get married. I don't want to have kids. I loved my freedom so much. I tasted it already. I don't want to give it up. So the if you remember, there was a war between like Crimean War started in 2014. So that's what happened, and Russia got a lot of sanctions, and because of those sanctions, we were working with international universities, so all our transactions were going through dollar. And because dollar skyrocketed, ruble dropped, the company started getting like clients were pulling out their money. So we were going into, and we were getting fined by universities for pulling out. And like I was at the time working for education, so we were sending students overseas to study, like the same way as what I did. And education is one of those things, it's a luxury, and it's one the type of luxury that people kind of diminish. Oh, my French, my English, everything is
Diminishing the
mixed up
value, yeah.
now. The Yeah, devalue as soon as like there's a problem, people kind of cut the education first, especially like expensive education, because you can always get a free one. So we were hit really bad with the our Moscow office hit really bad. It was like going down, 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 down. The creditors start coming, the all these people start coming, and we were like, okay, my dad was like, okay, I'm gonna close that company, that's it, I don't want to deal with that, I'm gonna shut it down. So what happened is I asked my dad, can I go to Russia and I'll try to take care of it, let me try and take care of it. And he was like, oh, okay.
Did you feel a
Sorry,
cultural
yes.
change when you came to Russia and kind of you had to do business in Russia, which was it differently?
Compared to Australia, or well, every country has its own kind of uh thing. I liked Russia in the sense of business. Russians are very, I want it yesterday, kind of, and they just work. They work, 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 work. They're like New Yorkers, you know. Moscow. I'm not talking about Russia. I'm talking about specifically Moscow. And they are very demanding, they demand the service, they because they, unfortunately, it's good or bad, I don't know, like they are paying. And there's a saying in Russian, those who are paying are the ones who are ordering the music. So they will order, they will demand, they don't order, they demand. I kind of liked it. It gave me that energy to kind of push through my own things. I was like going, 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 go, 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 go. I had no time for anything, and I was just like
Wow.
going through. It was real fun. I enjoyed it. It was a bit stressful. I had a bit of a stroke as well in the middle of that because I have a high blood pressure. Yeah, I felt really, really good. And Moscow is such a dynamic place, and it's very fashionable. It's not just, dynamic, but it's very fashionable and dynamic. So women work hard and they work beautiful. So you have these girls on the high heels, like with the great cars, walking out from their like Lexuses and stuff. It felt good. I felt like home. No, not for too long though, because it
What
drains you
happened?
out, and it drained me out as well. But 3 months later, after I arrived there, I met my husband, future husband, who I was not supposed to get married, who I was like, oh no, I'm leaving Uzbekistan, so I don't want to get married. And then I met this guy. I was like, oh shit, I'm married.
Hi, you're listening to Finding Your Place podcast. Thank you for listening. What convinced you to get married?
He, we just clicked, and we just clicked so well.
You liked Russia and you were like really enjoying your life there. You were like hardcore go getter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why the fuck you
So
moved to France?
I told you. I fucked it up so badly. I fucked it up so badly. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if we're allowed to say that, but
Go.
that was the that was a big, big, big fuck up. Between Russia and Uzbekistan, we have a no visa, so you don't need to get a visa there. But you do have to count your days. Like you need to, like with I think it used to be like that in between UK and Europe, like
Yeah.
90 days in 180 days kind of thing. So I, I don't know, somewhere along the way, during that wedding period, and I organized a big wedding. I was like, if I'm at the beginning, I told my husband, "Oh, let's have a little, like a small wedding. Like I don't want to do much stuff." And he was like, "No, I want to wear white dress." And that was my husband. He's like, "I want a big wedding." I was like, "Oh, okay. So what are we gonna do?" He's like, "Oh, let's do like a wedding here, like in France, in Russia, in Uzbekistan, blah blah blah." I was like, "No, let's not spread across. If we're gonna have a wedding, let's do it in Uzbekistan, but we're gonna do it big." So with all those ceremonies and everything, somehow I kind of stopped looking at my passport and stopped looking at my dates and counting the days. So the last ceremony we had was, and plus I got knocked up on the wedding day. My first pregnancy was literally on the wedding day. And a month later, I was like, oh shit, I'm pregnant. We were super happy. We were not expecting that kind of thing. But we're like, yes, cool, cool, cool. And then I had my first miscarriage. So we're like, oh shit, whoa, okay. But everybody was like, oh, don't worry, don't worry. Things happen. But it was very, with the complications. So I had to go through the surgery, like the cleaning, proper, like, what do they call them? TNC, I think. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, so that, and then I was kind of sad, and my husband was like, we were not supposed to do that that year, the year of the wedding, but my husband was like, hey, how about we go on a honeymoon? Let's go 5 weeks to USA, driving across US. I was like, yeah, cool, cool, cool. So to kind of battle that miscarriage, we decided to move our honeymoon 1 year in advance, and we did the honeymoon same year as wedding year. So we were like, went to US summer, amazing. And obviously, amazing things what happened. I got knocked up again. I was like, oh, wow, great news. Again, I was like 2 months after my miscarriage. So I was like, oh, that's good. It should be. Everybody was like, it's okay. Like, this is normal. Like, you can get pregnant straight after the first miscarriage. So that was like happy, 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 happy. 2 months later, again miscarriage. Again, it's called silent miscarriage. Basically, what happens is the baby dies inside of the body, but and that's it. So we were like, oh shit. And I kept getting paranoid. I'm like, oh, there's something wrong with my body. Like, I don't feel the typical like pregnancy symptoms. What's going on? And my husband's like, relax, nothing. Stop being paranoid. So after a few weeks later, we go to doctor. I'm like, there's something wrong. I just cannot. And she's like, oh, your baby was like died 4 weeks ago. I was like, oh shit. So no wonder I didn't have proper like symptoms. I was just carrying the dead baby for the entire like 4 weeks. I was like, shit. So that was very traumatic for me, and that pushed me over the limits. I got depressed. I couldn't work. I couldn't do my things properly. Uh, and my husband again to tackle that. What was our decision? My husband was like, "Hey, look, relax. Like, how about we need to register our wedding. We actually had a wedding without the registration. So we're kind of more like a party without the actual registration. So it's like, how about it's time to register our union. Let's go to Paris. We're gonna do that. So again, to tackle my miscarriage, we decided to do something. We went to Paris and we got married in a beautiful, beautiful historical building in Mairie de Courbevoie. It's 18th century or 17th or 18th century building. Gorgeous. The insides is all like amazing. And the day we came back from Paris, we flew in. I still remember, it was the 30th of December. We flew into Moscow. We had a flight from Moscow to Siberia next day, literally. 1st of January we're supposed to 31st of December we're supposed to fly to Siberia to do the New Year in what do you call it, in Novosibirsk. It was supposed to be like a romantic kind of New Year together, me and my husband, and then all the other friends would arrive, and we all went to Shiryesh. Anyways, 3rd of December, and I was looking in the airplane. I was still looking, saying, "Oh, I haven't been back home for like almost a year. Like now it's like 60,000 rubles, which is like $1,000 to fly to Uzbekistan. I don't think I will be able. Then I have to work, blah blah blah." So we were just like talking about that. We come to the customs. My husband passes, and they put me aside. They were like, "Oh, can you step aside?" Okay. They take me to the detention center. And they're like, "You're not allowed to enter the country." I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, and my husband is gone. He's like went to pick up the luggage. They're like, "You know that you like your visa expired and you did not extend it." What do you mean? They're like, "Here, you have like 10 day. You're late, 10 day late." I was like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, you didn't know that." Like, I'm like, they're like, "Well, too bad. You're not allowed to enter the country. You're still not kind of illegal because you did not cross the border. But the moment you cross the border, you will be illegal and you will be detained properly you will be jailed." I was like, "Oh," I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" They're like, "Well, here you are. What do you want to do?" I'm like, "What am I supposed to do?" They're like, "Well, we see you came from Paris. We can send you back to Paris." I'm like, I don't have anyone in Paris right now. My mother-in-law who lives in Paris, she's like overseas. Like everybody's, it's a new year. Like it's supposed to be New Year, you know? I'm like, I need to call my husband. They're like, "Well, call him." I'm like, "I don't have a SIM card on my phone because my Russian SIM card was with my husband. So I had to change the SIMs." And they're like, "Well, too bad. What else you want to do?" I'm like, "Well, what can you offer?" They looked at my passport like, "You're from Uzbekistan, so we can send you to Uzbekistan. Where you want to go?" I'm like, "Tashkent." Like, okay. I was like, "Well, here you go." I wanted to go home. I'm apparently going home. So I was like, I managed to finally call my husband, like, and because he was waiting for me outside and he did not understand what's going on. Because the thing is, as a person looking like this, typical, I'm used to the fact that I always get searched at the airport. I'm the random person who they always search. So I'm okay with that usually. And usually like they search, they check and they let me go. But here they're deporting me. It's like, "Oh my God, I'm getting deported and what am I gonna do?" That so my we managed to actually I managed to reach my husband and I called him and it's like, "Babe, I'm getting deported." He's like, "What?" I'm like, and we got married the day before officially. We're like, "What the hell?" So we're like trying to figure out what's going on. So the airport customs people were really nice, actually. To be fair, they were very patient and they allowed my husband to re-enter the terminal, like the customs area, give me the big luggage. So, so we had to like repack everything. I took whatever I could take out of my luggage, and whoop, back to Uzbekistan. So 4 years living in Russia to zero because I am no longer allowed to Russia. For 3 years, I had kind of interdit for 3 years, and I spent like the night in detention center, which is
What an
so
experience.
not cool. There's a detention center at the airport, apparently. Did you know that? For the
No,
illegal immigrants like
I
me.
don't want to be there.
You don't want to be there. They were still nice. I mean, they fed me and everything, and I was just like, I was so shocked that I didn't know whether to cry, to laugh, so I was just laughing. Like I called my mom. I'm like, "Mom, I'm coming home." She was like, "What? But you said you can't." I'm like, "Well, apparently I can." She's like, "Oh, I'm so happy." I'm like, "Don't be yet." She's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "I'm getting deported." She's like, "Oh." Yep. So we
So,
tried to like lawyers. There's like some people when they get deported, they're so in need to be in the country because that is their only survival, that they were ready to be illegal to go and there. Thank God, thank God, I am sufficient enough. I have enough like money and status and everything that I didn't have to do that. So I was like, well, I'm illegal. Next stop. What do we do next? So my husband in Moscow, me in Uzbekistan. I spent the New Year with my family. It was amazing. I had so much fun, to be honest. I I I enjoyed it. My husband, though, in contrary, poor thing, because he could not cancel any of the flights anymore, he had to spend a romantic evening in Novosibirsk in Hilton Hotel alone.
But
Yeah.
so when did you move together in France then?
Well, after like talking to the lawyers and figuring out if it's possible to return to Russia, and everybody was saying, look, if you want to return to Russia, you need to do this. It's going to cost you shitloads, and the process will be longer than 3 years. I was like,
Mm.
what's the point? Like, they will lift the prohibition in 3 years, so there's no point. So we start looking at other options, and the next stop was France because my husband is French, and he was like, well, we were anyway supposed to move to France one day, closer to 50, but that's a different story. So like, okay, how about we move to France then? Because Vlad was like, I'm not gonna move to Uzbekistan. There's nothing for me there. I don't have anything to do there. And I was like, well, I'm not allowed to Russia. How about we both move to France? Even though now thinking about that, we would have done much better in Uzbekistan, I think. At least I would not have this much depression.
Yeah, and now he works with your uncle and all that stuff. So
He has his yeah, he has his worked, not anymore, but he they did some projects together, but he's been working, you know. So we came to same day, like I literally arrived to Uzbekistan, celebrated New Year, and then straight away I started organizing my documents for French as a wife. So good thing we managed to actually register our wedding, because if we didn't, I wouldn't be able to do that anymore. So at least they kicked me out before I
right
before I
timing.
got yeah, after I got my kind of status. So we were like, okay, let's organize. I organized everything. Vlad had to kind of uh, clean out his business, close his deals, everything, and like make sure that he doesn't have any loose ends. On my end, I had to quit. Obviously, I didn't really quit. I still did kind of from home work. I did some work from home, and I couldn't go to Russia itself, but I still could talk to my clients. I could talk to my partner. I could talk to my universities and stuff. So I was still doing my work, and I arrived to Paris, I remember, in February, 28th of February. And Vlad was not still here. He was still like tying up the loose ends in Moscow, because we lived there for 4 years. So we accumulated shitloads of stuff again. So yeah, and I lived with my mother-in-law. It was all right. I kind of enjoyed it. A month later, we decided that we want to keep, because we had a cat, we had a car, we had life in Moscow. So we're like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? We decided we're gonna bring the car and the cat by car from Moscow. I can't go to Moscow, so I can't help him drive, but we can meet in Litva. So he drove all the way. He packed the car, like fully packed everything he could get, all my stuff, all our 4 years of our life, packed the car to the brim. Like there was no space for me at all. And he drove to Litva. I came from Paris to Litva by bus, by train. Like I didn't fly there because it was the border city, border town. I couldn't kind of take anything except buses. So I got there. We met at the border of the Russian border. And yeah, after that, we drove to France. We settled in Lyon. We came to Lyon. We got an apartment, and that's where my hell started. After two miscarriages, I got pregnant third time, and it was planned pregnancy already. We worked with the French doctor. And the thing is, which also kind of contributed to my depression, is the fact that I was so dependent to Vlad for everything. Like I could not communicate with doctors. And as a woman, you understand how vulnerable you are at the gynecologist. And having that vulnerability shown to your husband, who was had to stand right above you while they're doing the whole like female examinations and translate and talk to your doctor, making jokes and fun and stuff, and you don't understand. And you, I knew that they're not talking about me. They had like their own conversations as well, and my doctor was a guy as well, so it was a very good professor, male doctor, but it was a male. So two guys talking to each other, and then like every time me like sitting there keep asking Vlad like, what did he say? What did he's like, oh wait, and then like he would translate, but not everything. So out of like a sentence of 10 20 words, he would translate like the translation would be 3 words, you know. So it was quite frustrating, and it kept happening for all the time. He wasn't being bad or mean. It was just like, you know, they clicked, the doctor and my husband, they clicked well. They had their own chat going on, their own things going on, while the guy had things inside of me, like literally my legs apart, and you know.
Yeah.
So that things, and any type of anything I had to do that was related, not even related, like anything I had to do, I had to ask Vlad to do. Like, babe, can you come with me for shopping? Babe, can you do this? Babe, can you do that? And slowly my salary also, like my saved up money also started diminishing because I had to quit the job anyways. I couldn't stay, I couldn't get my, you know, everything like, so I was depleting my own money. And I start like, my husband was like, hey, this is like you can use my card, which is normal. But for me as independent woman, it was very hard to use his money. So I was like, I kept the feeling of vulnerability, the feeling of being useless. And again, I had the third pregnancy, very hard pregnancy. It was very, very tough on me. And my husband, every time I'm asking him to be with me, he has to work. He can't just like, you know, he's still, and he had to go overseas every time. And every time he's overseas, I'm just there alone. And he left me with his grandma because it's like, oh, you know what? She can take care of you. I'm like, but she doesn't speak any language except French. So we were like, I was very, very vulnerable, being taken care of a person who I met like 5 6 times in my life, who doesn't speak my language, who I cannot communicate, and who like, it was very, very hard on me. And all those depressions from the of so I had a PTSD already by then. I had a massive PTSD. I had anxiety. I had panic attacks every time, like the baby. I was so scared that I'm gonna lose the baby that I still did. And I lost the baby when Vlad was not there. I was alone. I was in the village, like in the mountains, with with his grandma. I couldn't explain what's going on. Like it's trying to get to hospital, and finally getting news that your baby died again and again inside of you from a person who I couldn't even understand. They trying to explain. I had to call my friend who barely spoke French to translate to me. And that friend wasn't very close. It was just somebody who I knew because there was no other person in France who could help me. And she was nice to go, and you know, so she took me. We went to the hospital, and they told me like, your baby died, like you had a miscarriage. And the girl was like trying to understand them and then trying to explain it to me, and she was like, oh, you had a miscarriage. And I was like, the baby's heart stopped and all this stuff again, and the whole thing went back. But here I was alone. At least in Russia, even if I was alone, I could handle that. easier because it was in the language that I could speak, I could communicate, I could. Here I was alone in the sense of I could not even talk to anybody. I could not communicate with anyone. So that happened, and then it was also very hard on me. Then after that, it was more things happening when we moved to Lyon. So we finally moved to Lyon. Then it was, you know, I was getting more and more depressed. So the France for me associated with the bad decisions, miscarriages, unable to talk, not having friends, being locked in. Like I had my lockdown before the lockdown. I would not leave the house because I couldn't. Like unless Vlad was there, I could not leave the house. So I was just like all the time inside, locked in with my cat, cat lady. So, and that affected on our relationship as well a lot. I could feel my husband being already not disgusted, but that kind of looking at me from above saying like, oh, you're always at home. You're always like, you're doing nothing. You're like, he's like feeling like, when does your depression end? What the hell,
It was like you
So it
lost
was
yourself.
pretty hard. I lost it. I lost totally. I was not the person I knew. And it used to irk me a lot because it was also, I knew who I am. Like, how could me, that boss lady, turned into this who barely took showers? By the end, I was not taking showers. Like, I wouldn't want to, like, unless my husband was at home, I would only, make myself pretty. Otherwise, I was like, just wake up, not wash myself, just eat, lay down, get up, eat, lay down. That's it.
So
That was my life.
I'm sorry, I
And
never experienced this, and I can only imagine how difficult it was, particularly being far away from
I do
everyone you knew.
not wish to anyone that. It's hard. It's very hard.
What would be your
It's
advice for people who are in similar situations? What helped you get out?
honestly, first get a psychologist. Psychologist. It's important. I know it's expensive. I know it's hard, but get a psychologist. Try talk it out. And you know what? Don't be afraid of being in that situation. I now thinking about it, I realize it is okay. It is okay to be in that situation. If you don't feel like doing anything, don't force yourself. Don't try to force it on you, because the more you start forcing, the less you will do, the less you will do, the more guilt you will feel and more depressed you will feel. So don't force it. Embrace that depression. Let it be there. Okay, you're depressed. Embrace it. You need to sleep out. Sleep. You need to sleep 10 days. Sleep 10 days. Don't force yourself to come out of the depression if you're not ready for that. And when you feel like a little bit, okay, I think I'm tired of just sleeping, because you will. After 10 days of just sleeping, you will feel like you're being suffocated inside. That's when you start getting your shits together. That's when you start going outside and get your things together. So everybody has a different reason for depression, so I can't say that my reason was the same as somebody else's. Somebody with a lot of friends might have a depression, or me, in my case, I didn't have anyone to be with. That's what also was the depression. So find your own pace and just kind of listen to your body, listen to what your body is saying. You feel tired of sitting at home, go outside. You feel tired outside, go home, go sleep. Just embrace it and don't force yourself. Because if you stop forcing yourself to not be depressed, this is when you start kind of letting it go and it just comes out slowly. I tried to force myself and I kept getting more and more into depression. It was hard.
Yeah, thank you.
No,
I it's so damn difficult to move
well,
abroad. I think people don't talk about it enough. It's so difficult on your
it
mental
is.
health.
It is. It
And
is. It's very hard.
it's like people post this nice pictures. I moved here, and this look like on the outside, people might seem happy because they're in a new place, but you never know what they're experiencing. So I think it's also important to support each other when things like this happen.
Exactly. And the thing is, you know what? People say like, oh, like exactly, like a lot of people post ads and like photos and stuff, but uh from my experience, I've seen people giving up a lot as well. Like you think, oh, those who left, they will never come back. But actually, no. If millions like stayed, millions come back. So, and it is okay. I personally, I was when I first moved to Australia, I was afraid to go back. I was afraid to be loser because I was like, oh my God, I have this amazing opportunity. So um I should not go back because if I go back, I will be the loser. But now I realize it's not the strength that kept me actually. It's the fear that kept me there. And people who realize that, you know what, it's okay, I don't want to be here, I am happy back home, they're quite strong as well. Like people who say, oh, that loser came back who could not survive. No, it's not a loser. It's a person who decided, you know what, this is not for me. I want to go back. I want to do my things back home. And it's okay. It's okay as well, I think, too.
I I agree, and I it's quite an interesting perspective because I was actually talking last week with my friend who moved back home, and yeah, he's from Vietnam, and he had certainly like the same kind of advice to it. So we are approaching the end of this, and I will
Yep.
ask you my final question.
Go.
Does it feel like home for you being in Lyon right now?
Interesting. I don't know if you see my last post about the random guy I met in Lyon. Um, I actually got the same question other day.
Yeah.
Suis-je à ma place? It was a randomly on the street I met him. The guy was making he was selling envelopes with the questions he created and made it. So I bought an envelope and that was, am I in my own place? My first response was no. I was like, no, I hate this country. I hate the bureaucracy. I've been so much through this. But to be honest, I am getting there. You asked me that question last time, and I said, yeah, I am creating my own place. Now it went from sure, sure, sure to hell no, I hate France to again, it's home is where you make yourself home. Then, so yeah, I am creating that environment where I'll make myself home here. Actual good news, I we started IVF,
Congratulations.
so we will be pregnant again in August. So hopefully that will work.
Fingers
Fingers
crossed.
crossed. And I just got a job offer, a real job offer from a French company for as a software development engineer and test. So um, I'm starting on Monday my work,
Amazing.
and
Well done.
I know. So yes, I am like, am I at home? I don't know. I don't know yet. Last time I said, yeah, yes, I think home is where you belong. Home is where you feel like home because I was in the middle of the mountains or fields. I don't remember where I was. But right now, I I don't know. I will try to make this place home. I have, yeah, instead of a cat, now I have two dogs.
I
So
like it though.
I'm making my home.
I think that's there is quite a philosophy behind it, and it's like
Yeah,
proving that it's up to you at the end of the day. It's you are the one who is building your home.
exactly. And
Well,
at the end, if it does not feel like home, move out. If you tried everything, move out. Like I gave my husband recently I gave my husband a 5-year plan because we were like after I finished my Camino, again, I was struggling a lot already with the work and trying to get a job and stuff like that. He's been having some trouble with the French bureaucracy because we're now trying to settle down, properly settle down, and the French bureaucracy is just a nightmare. So that day I sat him down and I was like, okay, you know what? This is this is a bullshit. This is a I cannot deal with that. So 5 years. We give ourselves 5 years. We tried everything in France. We did. I cannot say that I haven't tried. I cannot say that my husband didn't try. We did everything to settle down and make this place home. And if in 5 years we are still in the same position, we're moving out. It doesn't matter where. I don't care. We're moving out. So in US, Canada, Australia, it doesn't matter. But we have to leave this country because it means if in after 5 years it will be 10 years altogether for us. If in 10 years we didn't make a proper life in France, that means France is not accepting us. So we need to leave.
That's
So
fair though.
so far we are working and it looks like we are settling. Actually, my husband is about to open a restaurant, Ukrainian
Oh,
restaurant in Lyon.
that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I just got a job offer and things are like, after that conversation actually things start settling down. I feel like France got scared. It was like,
Well,
okay, 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 no more problems for you.
congratulations and
Thanks.
good luck on that. I hope we have this chat in a couple of years and you give us an update. Great news again. And
Hopefully, maybe we'll see you. Maybe in 5 years we'll be somewhere else, maybe here still, we'll see. I don't know.
well,
Thank you for your time, and thank you for giving me that opportunity to kind of go back in time and think about things that happen and why things happen and why I'm still here and why I'm in the position the way I am. Because along the way with life, you kind of forget what you went through and you're just like frustrated with the fact that things are not going on. But to be honest, like talking to you made me realize, oh shit, I did overcome a lot of things and I am moving very fast. So I'm not a loser yet.
you're not. And thank you so much for opening
Yeah,
up.
now I realized. My
You
pleasure. It was a very good talk. It was very good talk. Thanks to you.
same. No, thank you. Hi guys, thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast because this is going to help us build the future episodes.